I got a message saying my wife, Emma, had made a reservation at a restaurant for Valentine's Day. That caught me off guard because I was usually the one who handled things like that every year. But by the time evening rolled around, all I got from her was a text saying she had to work late. Not long after, I stumbled across a WhatsApp post from her colleague, Jacob. It read, "Only a caring sister knows how to spoil someone. A fancy restaurant, a sweet person. Tonight's cake was sweet, but not as sweet as your lips." The picture attached to it showed Jacob and Emma sitting together in an intimate pose. Around her neck was the necklace I had given her that morning. On the table was the bottle of wine I had gifted her as well. And the restaurant? I recognized it immediately. It was the same one where Emma and I had made so many special memories, including the night I proposed to her. There was a time when I would have confronted her the second I saw something like this. But now, I just felt drained. When Emma got home, I was sitting at the table eating a mango. She's allergic to them, so for years we never had mangoes in the house. When she saw me, her expression flickered with surprise for a second before she casually handed me a gift. Patek Philippe watch. "Happy Valentine's Day, honey," she said with a smile. She wasn't just someone who took. She gave, too. A good wife, after all. But earlier that day, I had received a message from the restaurant owner, and that had thrown me off. He had known Emma and me since our college days, and in his usual joking way, he mentioned how he was still single but congratulated us. Then he brought up a new cake they had added to the menu and asked if I wanted to try it. I asked if it had mango in it, and he assured me it didn't. So I agreed. Not long after, Emma called. She told me she had to stay late at work and wouldn't be able to make it to dinner. That night, unable to sleep, I found myself scrolling through my phone. And that's when I saw Jacob's post again. The photo of him and Emma at the restaurant. The wine, the necklace, and the cake, layered with mango puree. Emma was allergic to mango. I was too tired to start a fight. I didn't even bring up what I had seen. Instead, I had a sudden craving. So, for the first time in years, I ordered mango and ate it, enjoying every bite. When I finished, I put my phone down and said, "I'm going to bed now if there's nothing else." Emma, clearly surprised, reached out and grabbed my arm. "Ryan, it's Valentine's Day." I looked at her, confused. "So?" Her frown deepened as she stepped closer to me. In a teasing whisper, she leaned in and murmured, "On a night like this, are you really going to bed so early?" Emma always carried herself with an air of distance, a cold allure. After we graduated, her glasses only added to her intellectual charm, making her seem even more untouchable. But tonight, as she stood close to me, I caught something different. A faint scent of cigarette smoke clinging to her. I took a step back, dodging her kiss, and said, "I just ate mango. You'll have an allergic reaction." Without waiting for a response, I walked into the bedroom, locked the door behind me, and lay down. A few moments later, my phone rang. It was my supervisor. "So, are you really taking the position this time?" she asked, her tone sharp. "If you flake on me again because of Emma, I swear I'll kill you." I let out a chuckle. "I won't back out this time," I assured her. "If I do, I'll personally deliver my head to you." The job in the advertising department came with a higher salary, but it also meant constant travel. 3 years ago, I had turned it down for Emma's sake. She was always a traditional woman, and I knew she wouldn't handle the instability of me being away for most of the year. It had taken me over 6 months just to hold her hand for the first time. Even back in middle and high school, my friends never understood why I liked her. To them, she was too cold, too distant, too dull. I would just smile and say, "Because she saved my life." Literally. It happened in middle school when an earthquake struck during class. The moment the tremors hit, the entire school panicked, students shoving and scrambling to escape. I was near the front of the crowd, running for the exit, when my foot caught on the leg of a desk. I fell hard. Amid the chaos, Emma had pushed her way against the frantic crowd, fighting to reach me. She stayed close, guiding me through the shaking building until we made it outside. Later, I asked her, "What were you thinking? If you had died, All your hard work and dreams would have been for nothing. She had looked a little surprised by the question but shrugged. I wasn't thinking that much. In that moment, I just thought, if I couldn't make it, I'd rather die with you. That was Emma, always putting others before herself. But now, I wondered if she had ever imagined a day would come when she'd leave me for someone else. I had never doubted her sincerity. But sincerity fades. My supervisor must have picked up on the change in my tone. Everyone makes mistakes, Ryan. It's easy to blame the past, but fixing things? That takes courage. Then, with her usual sarcasm, she added, "Of course, someone as perfect as me never makes mistakes. But you're not perfect, so it's understandable. Just don't lose your job over it, all right? You start in 3 days and there's a business trip to Argentina right away. No room for half measures." The next morning, I left early to wrap up work at the office. As I walked through the living room, Emma was sitting on the couch. Her lips looked swollen, likely an allergic reaction from kissing Jacob after their night out. I moved past her without a word, but she grabbed my wrist. A little defensive, she asked, "Are you mad because I didn't spend time with you yesterday? I told you I had to work overtime," she went on, frustration creeping into her voice. "The company is going public. Do you have any idea how hard it's been for me as a woman to climb up to management? All eyes are on me. I have to set an example. You always said you'd support my career, so why are you acting like this now?" For years, I had tolerated her cold, distant nature. Even when she was too busy to know I had been hospitalized. Even when I couldn't reach her for days. I had never complained. Until that one time. I had gone to pick her up from work, and as she was touching up her makeup in the car, her phone rang. She answered immediately, her voice warm, sweet. And for the first time, I heard her mention Jacob. That's when I realized she was never too busy for a phone call. She just didn't think I was worth that part of her. I pulled my arm away from her grip. "Enough, Emma. We're done." Before I could say another word, her phone rang again. She glanced at the screen, hesitated, then looked at me with an almost apologetic expression before answering. Jacob's voice came through the speaker. "Sis, come pick me up. It's freezing today, and I don't want to get out of bed. If you don't come, I'll be late and won't get paid." Emma's face softened instantly. "You're afraid of the cold?" she teased. "The same guy who climbs snowy mountains at night? All right, Jacob, get up. You're bringing me breakfast, right?" I let out a bitter laugh. Jacob must have sensed something was off because he added, "Oh, and tell Ryan thanks for me. I not only ate at his restaurant yesterday, but I also borrowed one of his people. I'll make sure to send him a great gift later." Emma lowered the volume on her phone, giving me a guilty glance before looking away. I shook my head at the absurdity of it all and turned toward the door. But before I could leave, Emma suddenly ended the call and rushed after me. Jacob had a client dinner and forgot to book a restaurant, so I gave him our reservation. It was just for business, you understand, right? She probably didn't even realize how ridiculous that sounded. It didn't stop there. One night, when I wasn't feeling well, I asked her if she could make me some porridge. Instead, she put on her coat. "Jacob doesn't have any food at home. I'm going to cook something for him." I just sat there, frozen. I didn't even know what to ask. Was it about Jacob? About their relationship? Or about why she could cook for him but not for me? Not that it mattered. She didn't wait for my response. She left in a hurry, never even noticing that I was curled up on the couch, sick. It was a stark contrast to high school. Back then, if I looked stressed or skipped a meal, she would scold me, her voice cold and sharp. But during our lunch break, she'd always have a steaming bowl of rice cakes ready. "Eat up," she'd say. "You'll just get worse if I don't take care of you." At the office, my supervisor dumped a thick stack of paperwork onto my desk. "Get all this done in 3 days, or bring me your head." I worked late into the night. At some point, I checked my phone and saw a draft of the divorce papers from my lawyer. Without thinking, I grabbed my coat and took a cab straight to Emma's office. Snow swirled around the city, the streets almost empty. When I got to her floor, the power went out. I frowned and switched on my phone's flashlight. Just then, a colleague sent me a message. "Isn't this the concert you've always wanted to go to?" Confused, I clicked on the link. It led to Jacob's social media, a collection of posts, photos, videos, chronicling every moment he had shared with Emma. He had followed her from high school to college, then into her career. His bio read, "Being head over heels for her isn't just your privilege." I clicked on a video. Under flashing stage lights, Jacob and Emma stood in the crowd, hands entwined, their faces lit with excitement. Then, as the music swelled, they turned toward each other and kissed. My phone slipped from my grip and crashed onto the floor. A cold rage coiled in my chest. From inside her office, I heard muffled sobs. "I'm sorry, but we really can't." A man's voice, Jacob's. "I just like you. What did I do wrong?" Then, through the darkness, I saw him wrap his arms around her waist, gently brushing away her tears. He leaned in, kissed her. Bang! The power returned. The room flooded with light. They both turned, startled. Jacob stammered, "Ryan, it's not what it looks like. I swear. I'm just too in love with her. It's not her fault." Emma looked stunned, lips still glistening. "Ryan, why are you here?" I stepped toward Jacob, smiling. Then, without warning, I slammed my fist into his face. Before he could even hit the ground, I grabbed him by the collar, yanking him back up until our faces were inches apart. My glare burned into him. "That punch was for your pathetic face," I spat. "I've met plenty of pretentious women in my life, but you're the first male one." Disgust twisted in my stomach. Jacob tried to stammer out some excuse, but I didn't give him the chance. In one swift motion, I drove a right hook into his gut. The impact knocked the breath out of him, and he crumpled to the floor, gasping in pain. Emma snapped out of her daze and opened her mouth as if to say something. But before she could, my hand struck her across the face. She clutched her cheek, her eyes instantly welling with tears, a mixture of shock and hurt flashing across her face. I didn't care. With cold detachment, I slipped off my wedding ring and flicked it at her like a piece of trash. The moment it hit her, the tears spilled over, streaking down her already swollen cheeks. "Ryan, don't do this. Please, just listen to me." Her voice trembled. I cut her off and thrust the divorce papers into her hands. "Emma, we're getting a divorce." Her composure shattered. She abandoned all dignity, chasing after me as I stormed out of the office. "Ryan, please, it's not what you think." Her voice cracked, echoing through the hallway. Half the building was watching. The humiliation in her eyes was evident, but I was beyond caring. I walked straight outside, waving down a cab. Snowflakes drifted down, dusting the street in a cold white layer. Just as I was about to close the door, Emma pressed against it, stopping me. Her expression was desperate. "There's nothing between us, Ryan. He's just a kid. He doesn't know any better." I sneered. "Oh, I see. So you're just teaching him how to kiss in advance." "Huh." My voice was eerily calm. She stared at me, her eyes red-rimmed and full of loss, as if watching a ship sail away, knowing it was never coming back. "Don't look at me like that, Ryan," she pleaded, her voice barely above a whisper. "Please, don't look at me like that." Her lips trembled. "We've been together for over 10 years. I can't live without you. Jacob, he was just an accident." Before I could respond, a frantic voice interrupted us from behind. "Emma, Jacob's gone up to the rooftop. Come quick." She instinctively let go of the car door, spinning around in alarm. I let out a low, bitter laugh. Without another word, I slammed the door shut and told the driver to go. Through the rearview mirror, I saw Emma take a few hesitant steps toward me, then stop, torn for only a moment before turning and running back into the building. I leaned back against the seat, finally exhaling. With the rage fading, the pain in my chest hit me full force. The driver glanced at me in the mirror, his voice laced with concern. "Hey kid, you all right?" I wiped my face, turning my head to the side, and said nothing. Back home, I started packing. It wasn't long before both my parents and Emma's parents called me. I scoffed. So, Emma had time to calm Jacob down from jumping off a building, but she also made sure to alert both sets of parents to play peacemakers. I listened in silence as my parents spoke, their voices gentle. Son, we just want you to make decisions that bring you happiness. That was all they said. No pressure. No lectures. Once I finished packing, I opened the door, only to find Emma standing there, her face hollow with devastation. She looked like a child who had been caught doing something terrible, her hands shaking as she reached for me. Ryan, please don't leave. Let me explain everything. I just stared at her, expressionless. Then she broke down. I'm begging you, she sobbed. Hit me, scold me. Do whatever you want. Just don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that. She threw herself onto my suitcase, pressing it down with all her strength, as if that alone could stop me from walking out. Ryan, we promised we'd grow old together. Our parents are expecting us back in Beijing for the new year. You can't leave me now. Mom and Dad miss you so much. I sighed, looking at her. What do you want, Emma? She nearly collapsed, clutching my leg like a lifeline, her tears soaking into my pants. Please just give me another chance. I swear, I'll do better. I didn't answer immediately. My eyes drifted toward an old college graduation photo that had slipped out while I was packing. At first, it was just a nostalgic moment until I looked closer. The picture wasn't just of Emma and me. Jacob was there too, standing in the background, beneath a tree, gazing at Emma. And Emma, her eyes weren't on me. They were on him. So it had started that early, hadn't it? All those moments I thought were just between Emma and me. There had always been someone else in the picture. Emma trembled under my gaze, looking as guilty as a criminal awaiting sentencing. To her surprise, I spoke softly. All right. She looked up, stunned, her eyes glistening with disbelief. Really? Ryan, are you willing to start over with me? After a pause, I nodded. Sure. Then, in an even tone, I added, on one condition. Her breath hitched. Anything, she whispered. Remember how we always talked about going to the islands back in high school? We never actually went. I want us to take that trip. A 5-day vacation. She didn't hesitate. That's all? Ryan, of course. Yes. She threw herself into my arms. It's that simple? I nodded. But deep down, I knew she wouldn't go through with it. The more I thought about it, the more I realized Emma's attraction to Jacob wasn't really a surprise. Her entire life had been carefully planned out. From her strict upbringing to her education, her career, even our marriage, it was all a perfectly paved path. Stable, predictable, safe. And when life is too safe for too long, people start craving excitement. Jacob was that thrill. He was reckless, adventurous. He took her on late-night hikes up snow-covered mountains, kept her awake at concerts, kissed her under sunrises by the sea. No matter how composed or reserved someone is, passion like that can be intoxicating. Emma assured me that after our trip, she would never leave my side, that I'd never grow tired of her. She took full control of the planning, throwing herself into organizing every detail, as if terrified I'd change my mind. Meanwhile, I absent-mindedly scrolled through social media. Jacob posted constantly, like a man slowly torturing himself, drowning in his own emotions. His posts were filled with cryptic messages, indirect declarations of love. I watched from the sidelines, cold, detached, just waiting. Today, Jacob finally snapped and posted something blunt. The person she loves is me. I couldn't help but laugh when I saw it. In response, I made a post of my own. From now on, I'll be living on the islands with my wife. The past is behind us, gone like smoke. Today marks a new beginning. I just want to hold her hand from now on. It didn't take long for Jacob to react. Unable to contain himself, he demanded to meet. We sat across from each other at a cafe, his hands clenched into fists as he spat through gritted teeth. After everything, you're really going to forgive her? You're seriously staying with her? I simply smiled, offering no response. His frustration boiled over. You're really leaving? You're actually moving to the islands? Then why hasn't she said anything to me? I pulled out the visa my supervisor had expedited for me and casually dropped it on the table. Half joking, I said, Emma and I have been together for over 10 years. She begged me for another chance. I told her if she was willing to drop everything and leave with me, I'd forgive her. I leaned back, my smile devoid of warmth. Of course, she agreed. Jacob's face contorted with fury. That's impossible. I've done everything for her. She told me she loves me. I could hear the pain beneath his anger, but it didn't move me. Jacob had orchestrated all of this. Stealing Emma away on Valentine's Day, rubbing their affair in my face, taunting me with posts meant to break me. He thought if I saw them together, I'd give up. What he didn't understand was that my place in Emma's life ran deeper than he ever realized. His plan had backfired. Blinded by rage, he lunged at me. But what could a guy like him really do? I easily blocked him. Then, without hesitation, picked up my coffee and poured it over his head. Before he could react, I slapped him across the face, sending him sprawling to the floor. I crouched beside him, grabbing his hair and forcing him to meet my gaze. Pathetic, I muttered. You actually thought Emma loves you? Didn't you? His face twisted in frustration and resentment. I fought the urge to laugh. You didn't actually believe it, did you? I let go of him, standing up as he groaned in pain. One last time, I repeated my ultimatum. If Emma chooses to leave with me, I'll forgive her. We'll start fresh. I watched as his expression changed. The realization hit him. At the airport, Emma anxiously checked her phone. Her lips pressed tightly together. Then, finally, she turned to me. Ryan, this time is different. Jacob's been in a car accident. It's serious. Her voice was laced with urgency. Can we postpone the trip? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I studied her face, tracing every familiar feature with my gaze. Then I finally spoke. I know why you didn't come to that concert with me. Emma stiffened. Her lips twitched as if she wanted to smile, but she couldn't. I continued. That night. It was Jacob's birthday, wasn't it? She said nothing. He invited you, and you couldn't turn him down. Emma's breathing hitched. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. That was my favorite band, Emma. I've talked about them since I was a teenager. You knew that. You even asked me what I wanted for my birthday, remember? I told you my wish was to have enough money to see them live. I paused, my voice steady. And you got mad. Her eyes widened slightly. You asked why my wish didn't include taking you with me. I exhaled slowly. My 18th birthday wish was to see that concert with you. But in the end, I went alone. Emma lowered her gaze. I didn't know that while I was standing there, listening to the music I had dreamed of for years, my wife was in the same crowd, kissing someone else. I smiled faintly, shaking my head. I even sent you a message during the concert, reminding you to eat. You never replied. Emma's fingers clenched around her phone. Panic flashed across her face. There will be other chances. I cut her off. No, there won't. Her breath caught. That was their farewell concert, Emma. She swallowed hard. There won't be another one. Silence stretched between us. Then, with a sigh, I leaned back and waved a hand dismissively. Go ahead, I said lightly. He's been in an accident. You're his supervisor. It'd look bad if you didn't go. Emma hesitated, looking at me as if searching for something. I met her gaze and smiled. We'll just go next time. Relief flooded her face. She turned and ran out of the airport, disappearing into the snow and rain, rushing to Jacob's side. I watched her go, then reached into my pocket and pulled out my plane ticket. Without a second thought, I tore it into pieces and tossed it into the trash. Then, I walked to the counter and printed a new ticket. Destination: Argentina. Emma woke up to the sensation of warm lips brushing against her skin. Her heart pounded. Something didn't feel right. She opened her eyes wide and froze. This wasn't Ryan. Memories came rushing back. Yesterday, she had arrived at the hospital, only to discover that Jacob's car accident had been a lie. Furious, she had demanded an explanation. But Jacob had simply looked at her with red-rimmed eyes and whispered, "Emma, I've loved you for so many years. Just one last time. Can't you stay with me for one more night?" A voice in her head had screamed at her to leave. Ryan. Ryan would be furious by now. But Jacob's fingers had brushed her cheek, his touch tender. His gaze held hers, pleading. And somehow she hadn't been able to turn him away. A sinking feeling gripped her chest. Sometimes, when you're about to lose something truly important, you can feel it, like the sickening sensation of falling in a dream. Her mind flashed back to yesterday, to the moment Ryan had waved goodbye at the airport. There had been something final about it. She bolted upright, frantically reaching for her phone. Jacob sat up beside her, confused. "Emma, what's wrong?" She ignored him, her hands shaking as she tried to turn on her phone. The battery was dead. Panic clawed at her throat as she waited for it to charge. The second it powered on, her mother's number popped up on the screen. She answered immediately, only to be met with her mother's furious voice. Ryan had sent everything to their family, friends, and colleagues. A PowerPoint presentation, screenshots, pictures, dates, evidence of her affair, meticulously compiled. And the final slide? Ryan's signature touch, a photoshopped wedding invitation featuring her and Jacob, with a handwritten note at the bottom. "Let's all wish this lovely couple a lifetime of childless, everlasting happiness." Emma's hands trembled as she scrolled through her messages. Then she ran. She sped through the winter streets, breaking traffic lights, nearly skidding off icy roads. None of it mattered. She needed to find Ryan. He had always been forgiving. He had always been kind. Surely, even now, she could still fix this. But when she reached home, he was gone. Ryan had packed up everything. She stared at the empty space in their house, feeling like the walls were closing in. Then, finally, she understood. Ryan hadn't just left the house. He had left her. And this time, he wasn't coming back. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, I sat on a sunlit terrace in Argentina, watching the world move on. The past was behind me, and I wasn't looking back. In Buenos Aires, tango dancers twirled through the streets, their movements a seamless blend of elegance and fire. The city itself was a mix of European charm and Latin passion, alive with music, laughter, and the scent of roasting meats drifting from Perillas. A business partner had invited me to Mendoza, where vineyards stretched under the summer sun like a vast green ocean. I sat on the terrace of a winery, sipping Malbec, the deep red swirling in my glass, when my phone buzzed. Emma's name lit up the screen. Her voice was hoarse, raw. "Ryan, where are you?" I took another sip of wine, savoring the taste before answering. "On the other side of the world. What do you want? If you've signed the divorce papers, send them to my office. If not, don't bother calling." Silence. I was about to hang up when I heard it. The sound of her breaking. A quiet sob at first, then the floodgates opened. "Ryan, I'm sorry," she choked out, her voice trembling. There was something almost childlike in the way she cried, like a lost girl searching for comfort in a crowd. "Please, forgive me. Tell me what to do, and I'll do anything." Her breaths came ragged and uneven. "We've been together for over 20 years. Can you really just let it go? How can you be so heartless?" A slow smile tugged at my lips. She must have sensed it because her crying stopped abruptly. Panic seeped into her voice. "Ryan, why are you laughing?" I exhaled, looking down at the rippling wine in my glass. "You're always like this," I said, my voice steady. "Always so sure that I love you. So sure that if you show me your pain, I'll feel sorry for you. But, Emma, did it ever cross your mind that I don't love you anymore?" The next time I returned home, it was New Year's Eve. The thing about childhood sweethearts is they know each other too well. As my family gathered for the reunion dinner, the familiar warmth of home surrounded me. The sound of laughter, the smell of hot pot bubbling on the stove, the distant crackling of fireworks outside. Then came a knock at the door. I opened it. Emma stood there. She was thinner than before, her once polished appearance now disheveled. Her hair was unkempt, her eyes hollow. The weight of everything, the humiliation, the loneliness, hung over her like a ghost. The PowerPoint I had created had done its job. It had dragged both her and Jacob through the dirt, shattering the image they had carefully built. Their reputations, once pristine, had crumbled. Those who once admired her had withdrawn, disillusioned by the truth. I had overheard some of the gossip at dinner. I hadn't spoken to her since that last phone call. The streets outside glowed with lanterns and fireworks, a celebration of the old giving way to the new. Emma looked up at me, desperation flickering in her gaze. She struggled to speak, her voice barely a whisper. Every year, we've always spent New Year's Eve together. A tear slipped down her cheek. Ryan, I love you. I really can't live without you. I stared at her. And then, nothing. I had thought seeing her like this would hurt, that it would dredge up memories, make me second-guess everything. But instead, I felt absolutely nothing. Traveling the world, seeing new places, experiencing life outside of her had done something I never expected. It had filled the empty spaces she had left behind. The fireworks outside erupted, marking the end of the year, the passing of a long, cold winter. A new year had begun. I looked at her and said, Emma, don't do this. It's New Year's. My voice was calm, detached. Seeing you like this, it makes me sick. Her face turned ashen. I shut the door. When my parents asked who it was, I shook my head. No one. Then, I returned to the warmth of the dinner table, laughing as I fought for the last piece of beef in the hot pot, surrounded by family, by love. It was perfect. I still had my family. Under my supervisor's leadership, questionable as it was, my career soared. I adapted quickly to a life of constant travel, sending postcards from every new place I visited. My mom, having picked up some internet slang, now called me her travel frog. This time I was in Japan, walking toward a fireworks festival, casually munching on mango bread, when my mom called. Son, be careful. I heard Japan has a lot of earthquakes. I smiled, reassuring her. They're not that common, Mom. But fate had a cruel sense of irony. That same day, Japan's meteorological agency issued an unprecedented earthquake warning for the Nankai Trough. Flights were fully booked. Communication lines went down. For a while, I was unreachable. My mother panicked, lighting incense at midnight, praying for my safety. Emma heard the news. At the time, Jacob was still in her life, though he had lost his job and been blacklisted. They were stuck in a toxic cycle, unable to break free from each other. Jacob had tried to stop her. Don't be stupid. Even if you go, Ryan won't forgive you. Don't you get it? But Emma didn't listen. During their argument, she grabbed a kettle and smashed it over Jacob's head. Blood ran down his face as he screamed, "He doesn't love you. I'm the only one who does." She didn't look back. She boarded a flight to Japan, chasing after a man who had already let her go. I eventually made it home, despite delays. Just before takeoff, my broken phone had received a call from an unknown number, but the attendants had asked me to turn it off before I could answer. By the time I landed, I had forgotten about it. I reassured my family, returned to work, and tried to move forward. Then, one day, Jacob appeared outside my office building. He was no longer the smug, confident man I had once despised. His eyes were bloodshot, his clothes wrinkled. He looked completely unraveled. "Where's Emma?" His voice cracked. "Give me back my Emma." I frowned, staring at him through the glass door. How had he fallen apart like this? Then it all clicked. Emma had arrived in Japan before the earthquake. I remembered the strange call from before. I stayed calm and had security escort him away. "I don't care," I told him. "She's your problem now." The bad news came from Emma's parents. She had gone to the inn where I was staying, tried to call me, but all she got was a busy signal. She thought I was ignoring her. Desperate, she had kept searching for me. That's when the building collapsed. My mother, her voice heavy with sorrow, delivered the final blow. Emma, she didn't make it out unscathed. Her legs were crushed. They don't know if she'll ever walk again. She hesitated, then gently asked, Son, are you going to visit her? I looked out the window at yet another foreign city, where the sun cast its golden glow over the horizon. I exhaled. No, Emma and our story was over. The past dies with yesterday. The events of today are born anew. And as I stepped forward into the unknown, I hoped everyone could find the courage to flip the table and start fresh. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and like.